Welcome to Shop Talk, presented by ShowChic's, where they always put the rider in first place.
Dancer, rider, clinician, and five-star judge Janet Boyd. And author.
Well, thank you all for coming. I hope all of you can hear me. We have a speaker out in the other room, so let me know if back in the back you can't hear. So we're going to talk about losing stupid points tonight. Or Michelle wanted us to get loose, but we're gonna change the wording. I don't know if you saw the first flyer, there was a typo, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna be loose tonight. Oh, this will be fun. So we're gonna talk about losing points. And how many L graduates do I have here? Okay, quite a few. How many scribes do I have here? A lot. And don't you really get tired of writing not a 20-meter circle, 24-meter oval? Silly things. How much money do we pay to go to the horse show? A lot, right? How much money do we pay to buy all those clothes? Did you all see all the new colors and everything you can wear? Oh my God, I'm so confused. I'm gonna have to look at that every time somebody kind of comes in the ring like, is that legal? I don't know. So hopefully we haven't opened a Pandora's box, but in a way I think we can all be a little bit more athletic and dress a little differently, so I don't see any harm in that. All right, so I think what we should do, let's just take a poll. How many of you ride training through second level? Okay, how many third and fourth? And how many Prix St. George and above? And how many Grand Prix riders? Okay, good. Well, I have some information for all of you because it's silly to lose these points, right? And I guarantee if you pay attention to what I'm going to tell you tonight, you can raise your score by 2 to 3 percentage points. Not by doing anything differently, but paying a little bit more attention. Are we all for that? Yeah. Okay. So before I start, I think probably it's a good idea. There's enough education in the room. I think most of you know this, but I think it's a good review. How do I give my score? What do I do? How do I come to that score? How do I give my comment? And everybody always asks, so when you went to Tokyo, did you judge on a different standard than when you went to Omaha, Nebraska? No. Do I judge cute little girls with pigtails differently from adult amateurs? No. We all are judged on the same standard, and this is because we're an Olympic sport. We don't really have any choice. We also have had requests for years, could we please have a different standard for adult amateurs? But you know, let me tell you, I'm a judge trainer, and I have a heck of a time training judges just to figure out one standard. You know, much less, now we're gonna do this. If the pigtails are really cute, we're gonna do a few extra points, right? So how do we judge? And I have to tell you, I've been judging since 1976, so that's a long time. And judging methodology has changed over the years. When I first started judging back in the old days, and let's see, it was Mr. Nibleos from Switzerland. He was head of the FEI Dressage Committee. And he had said, one mistake, it's a 4. Okay, so that was pretty easy. You know, you sort of sat there like a little spider in your web and said, oh, you made a mistake, 4. Would you like some coffee? Isn't it a beautiful day? Oh, she made another mistake, 4, right? So that was really kind of a cookie cutter approach. And the interesting thing back then, when I went to the judges forums in Germany, Donner Hall, do y'all remember Donner Hall and Karin Rabine? He was getting a 6 on gates. So when we say, gee, you know, back in the old days, a 60% for your gold medal was really a big deal. You could be on a team for 60%. Nowadays, 60%'s like, you're satisfactory. You're getting a C in school, right? It really doesn't have much value. A 70% has a lot more value now. So what changed, number one, was we have this wonderful Swedish man named Eric Letta, who was a rider and a trainer. His wife rode on the Swedish team in Los Angeles. And when he became chair of the dressage committee, he said, all right, this automatic 4 is ridiculous. We're not thinking about quality. We have to be thinking about the athleticism of the horse. And if this horse meets all the requirements of this particular movement, and I'm going to insult people here now tonight, I'm sorry, but I'm an ex-rodeo queen, so I can do this. And I had a Joe Doc Leo, Bob Leo Doc myself, my rodeo queen horse. But we all know quarter horses, that they don't have a lot of suspension. They're bred to ride out after cows all day long and be comfortable. Can you imagine taking Vallegro and sitting his trot all day out on the range chasing cows? Oh my God, no. So if we have a quality that we're looking for in dressage, and we say for us, we're looking for elasticity and range of motion and freedom, basically, oh my God, that horse cost a lot of money. That kind of wow factor, all right? So if we have that type of horse compared to the cute little pony, obviously the wow factor horse is going to start out with a higher score, because we start first with the Q score, with the quality score. So the first thing we look at as a judge is the quality of the gait. We assess the trot, the canter, the walk, boom, and we come up with a score, right? Now, the next thing we have to consider is the training scale. Now, in this place, this is where those of you that can't afford the $2 million horse, if you have better training and you really pay attention to how you're riding the figures, you can get at least 2 points on top of your gait score. So if your horse is a 6.5 or a 7 mover rather than an 8 or 9 mover, if you have good training and a supple contact and a long neck and the mouth is closed, you can catch up with your training to the other horse. Because what we don't want to see in this sport is a super fantastic horse with bad training. Okay, that's not our goal. Our goal is to have a quality athlete with harmony and correct training. So quality first, so that's the Q. Then we have a plus the B. B is the basics. So we look at the training scale. Now obviously at training level, we don't go all the way up the training scale. Once we start getting into second level where we have collection, now we have to check off all those boxes. All right? Now rhythm is always the most important. And you can't sort of have rhythm. It's like you can't sort of be pregnant. Okay? You either got it or you don't. Make sense? So what really aggravates me, and I have quite a few things actually that aggravate me, but this is one of them, is when my new judgelets, I call them, my training judgelets, say things like nice rhythm. That tells the rider what? First of all, I hate the word nice. That's so nice. I don't like that's not descriptive, right, when it comes to horses. So we want to avoid the nice rhythm. We always only want to address rhythm if it's a problem. Loses rhythm. Sometimes they lose rhythm because they lose their balance. They're not lame. This is something else a good judge has to know. Is the horse lame? Is the horse irregular because the rider's hanging on the left rein and leaning off the right side of the horse? Is it the footing over X to 3 horses in a row go boop boop and have a hiccup? in half pass when the horse gets irregular. It's not because the horse is lame, it's because they're not laterally supple enough to the bend. So it's a totally different thing. And if we see that irregularity in the lateral work, that does not go down to the gait score. All right, which we don't have at the FEI level anymore. Okay, so we have Q plus B, quality plus basics. The next thing we look at is what we call the essence of the movement. What's the most important part of the movement? All right, let's take leg yielding, for example. The crossing of the legs. So if you have a horse that takes 20 steps to go from point A to point B, and you have another horse that takes 10 steps, one has a higher essence score than the other because they have a bigger range of motion. All right? Now, the last piece, which is what we call the modifier. This is where most of you fail. Big time. This is the accuracy piece. This is the, did you go too much sideways in your half pass at Prix St. George and have 4 strides straight before you did your flying change? Did you think the judge would appreciate how much you could go sideways? We don't. The letters are there for a reason. They tell you to go from point A to B for a reason. So if you go too much sideways, you don't get extra credit. Make sense? If you cut every corner, again, that's a modifier that's going to get you in trouble. If you don't straighten after your shoulder in before you go through the corner, that's a modifier that's going to get you in trouble. Now we have these 0.5s, which my last group of S candidates, I forbid them to use 0.5s one day because they could not really decide where they wanted to be. So I'm like, fine, you don't have 0.5 anymore. So it's the 0.5 should not be 30 extra scores. Does that make sense? And so we have to be careful as judges what we do with the 0.5. It's almost a 7, but not quite. But sometimes it's still a 7, and we get kind of stuck with the 0.5 thing. All right, so that's how we come to our score. We have quality plus basics plus the essence plus or minus the modifiers. All right? Now, that's a little bit like my husband who leaves money all over the house. He leaves a lot of other crap all over the house too. Men, don't you know? So I figure it's my tip. So as I'm going around the house and I'm cleaning things up and I'm putting, you probably do it, Cesar, don't you look innocent back there. See, it's easy to pick on men because we have so few of them in this sport. So I pick up all the money, right? Now, when I go to the bank, I throw it in this machine and it goes, tick, 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 $40, right? So what we do in dressage, quite a lot, like 35 times in the Grand Prix, is we have to determine which is the 50 cents, which is the dime, which is the penny, which of those pieces is more important than the other. And then we have to come up to a score, and we have to give a comment. Now, I try to give a comment, and I try to train my judgelets to do the same thing, that we want to address the most important aspect of that score. So if there's a rhythm problem, I will tell you there's a rhythm problem. Stop. I'm done. I don't need to go on and on and on and on because, first of all, my scribe has already quit riding and is thinking, I'm never going to volunteer to scribe for this woman again, right? The typing is much easier now. Except my scribe at the Olympics who typed with 2 fingers. Oh yes, that's another story for another day. Anyway, we want to make sure as a judge that we're giving you the most important information to help your training and to also tell you why we gave the score we gave you. All right? So the quality and the rhythm would be the first comment. If we see a training problem, would stop there. If so far everything's going check, 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 and you do a beautiful 24-meter oval at training level, which most of you do, you are just unbelievable. The arena is fresh. First horse comes in, does perfect 24-meter ovals, and the rest of you follow like lemmings.
Like sheep. Yeah. So
45 rides at training 3, at regionals, and not one. I mean, please, dear God, one 20-meter circle, I will give you a 10. That's all I ask. Okay, so let's go through the tests a little bit. Yep. If you have questions, if you think of something along the way, just write it down, and then we'll stop and do some questions in between. All right? Okay, so I'm going to bring up my little app. So let's talk about training level. The halt can be done in and out of the walk. So that's it at training level. After that, no more walking, i.e. Grand Prix riders. No, no, no. And if it says you must go to trot, first level and above, you go from halt to trot. You don't get to walk. So if you walk in and out of the halt at training level, fine, but remember, it's not a trail ride. So 5 or 6 steps is way too many. Yep, so think 2 or 3, and when we say strides or steps, let's talk about this. So the walk stride is all 4 legs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sense? The steps, we count with the front legs. So that's a step, that's a step. So I have 2 steps. So change of lead through the trot, we talk about 3 to 5 steps, not full strides. Are y'all with me? Okay. So the difference between steps and strides, there's a rule, we're changing that to make it a little more clear. Not that you guys ever read the rule book, but maybe some night you'll pick it up and help you fall asleep. All right, so halt. First thing you want to do, first impression. Oh, first impression is you're going around the ring. Now, I am busy doing my collectives and my comments for the rider before you. Your time doesn't really start until you come down center line. So if you come by my box and go, "Hi, Mrs. Foy, my name is Susie Dressage, and this is my fine horse, Joe Duck Leo Bob, and we're going to ride second level test 3 for you today. Oh, and my number is 341. Don't do that. Number 1, I don't care. Number 2, all you need to do is do a ride by and just give your number to the scribe, who is not writing my comments because I am. Okay? And we don't need your name. We don't need your horse's name. We don't need your test. If we have a question, we'll ask you. All right? Because it really interferes with my thought process a little bit. Okay, so that's a judge pet peeve, and I'm not the only one. So make sure you go by, give your number, done. Yeah. Now at a CDI or a championships, we have an announcer. And so usually we can see the number. And now that we only have 1 number, it's a good idea, if you know you always enter on the left lead canter, then put the number on the right. And then go by the judge so that the scribe can see the number. Does that make sense? All right, that's just, kind of good thinking. Okay, so we've gotten through the halt at training level. Yes? Okay. Can we talk about the salute? All right, this. No. It's too theatrical. Don't be flowery, don't be cutesy, right? Now, I will give you a tip. You're going to be the judge, okay? So here I come, down center line. I halt. I put my reins in one hand. I lift this hand up. It has my whip in it. And then I go, salute. My horse goes, ah! Right? Do not salute with the whip in your down hand. You have 2 choices. You can salute with your right hand or your left hand. It doesn't matter. Or put the whip over here with your reins. Okay? Hint number 2. When you salute, don't drop your eyes. because when you look up, your weight's going to shift, you're going to be disoriented, and the horse is going to feel that, and the horse is going to be crooked in the move off. All right? So I come down center line, I halt, and I make eye contact with the judge. And I'm like, honey, get ready. And then I put my hand here and I go, boop. And I'm still looking. Got it? Okay. Make it sharp, make it snappy, and then get the heck out of Dodge. Right? Okay, then you're going to be much straighter. Now, training level, it's very, very nice if we have a little bit of bend before we turn, sort of to help tell the horse which direction we're going to turn. Most of you don't do that either. You don't do that at third level sometimes. So this thing called shoulder fore, how many of you have heard of shoulder fore? Okay, how many of you use it all the time on a straight line? Yep. So when you come down center line, we really expect you to be in a little shoulder fore. That will help keep you straighter. All right? At Grand Prix, at the Olympics, the horses are strong enough, they really don't have to be in shoulder fore anymore. So it's a little different ball game at Grand Prix. Make sense? Okay. Now, you will be glad to know that in the new tests, we have gotten rid of the 3-loop serpentine at training 3 because none of you can do it. So we've abandoned ship, you win. Okay, we're done. So we're going back to the shallow loop. All right, but this year you're still stuck with the 3 loops. All right, so third level 3, here we go. First of all, accuracy. If you draw 3 concentric circles that touch each other, that's what concentric means. It's like a snowman, okay, with the same size of snowballs. Now, if you trace that figure, that's what you want to do for your serpentine. They're half circles connected by straight lines, which means there are no boops, boops like that. So, if this is my straight line, I'm going to be here on my half circle, and I'm going to have a thing called bend, which seems to be going out of style. Also in half pass, it's like bend. Where's the bend? Where's the bend? My students know I'm just like a maniac for bend. I'm like, look at Sabine, look at Stefan, look at the top riders. They bend the horse. You guys don't bend. So we're going to try to improve our bending at training level. Are you ready? Okay. So our first half circle, we're going to the left. We're going to bend. Now here's my connecting line. So I'm now bending. I'm like a capital C. You know, YMCA, right? Okay, now I come on my line. I have to take away that bend and come to shoulder fore. My haunches stay on this line. I'm going right here. Okay? Now, I slowly, as I'm getting here on the quarter line, straighten the shoulders, and I'm now coming towards center line. I move the shoulders in the new direction. New inside leg, new outside rein, and we do this thing called half halt. Okay? And now the horse is like, oh, baby, we're going to turn right because Mama prepared me. Now we have to make sure, though, that our little lamb does not turn just because we bend him. Right? We have to say, you wait, you wait, you wait, turn. And I tell you why, because wouldn't it be fun to be able to do zigzags on your horse at some point? Okay, if you don't do this at training level, your zigzags are going to be a horror show. And then you're going to have to pay your trainer another $2,000 to train you to do it right. Where if you just did this little thing at training level, your horse would be like, bend has nothing to do with turn. I must wait for the aid. Are you with me? Okay. So if you guys could ride loops like this, showing a change of bend, showing how organized you are as you do this, and keeping the horse in a nice trot and forward, the judges are going to be like, oh my God, I'm so excited. And then we do really get excited. We give like 8s and 9s and stuff. right? So don't be like the 45 horses at the regional championships that none of them do it right, and the poor scribes are like, can I just have a rubber stamp for that, please? I'm just tired of doing this. Make sense? Okay. Training level 1 and 2, and then the canter circles at training 3. They are at the dreaded E and B. Yep. Now, I would say 98% of the time, you guys judge these all the time, right? 98% of the time, they're probably 24-meter ovals, because you all are using the RSVP line, all right, to find your markers. You have to be inside of those letters. A circle at A and C is outside. It's exactly the same path we just did that we just talked about on the Serpentines. So young horses tend to fall in on the first half of the circle and fall out on the second half of the circle. Do we all know this? Yep. Unless your horse is like gone to college at 5 years old. But that's their tendency. So thinking a little bit, when you're training, what does my horse do when I'm training? Does he fall in the first half? Then I make the first half a little bit bigger by thinking a little leg yield, and I make the second half a little bit smaller with a little bit more of my outside aids. Because I'll tell you what, that same habit is going to carry over into your canter pirouettes. Okay, it's not just, oh, once I get past training level, this is going to finish. It won't, right? It'll become more and more ingrained, and they get worse and worse. All right, so accuracy on those circles, accuracy on the loops. Yes? Corners. Corners, any horse can be trained to go into the corner, I don't care how old it is, if you ride your corners like 2 straight lines with a turning aid, and you make your horse wait. So Kira Kirkland does this exercise all the time, and you walk, and when the horse starts to turn, he's like, Mom, there's the rail, there's the rail. You just stop and say, I didn't give a turning aid, good boy. And then you give a turning aid. They get used to that, they wait for you, then you do the same thing at trot, same thing at canter. And now they understand the corner. Now you have to remember to give a turning aid and not get sloppy. And it's totally the wrong idea to think that you're gonna leg yield into the corner, because that pushes the energy through the outside. Have you all watched any of the Olympics? Yeah? Okay. So you know the bobsled thing? When they're turning really fast to the right, that wall over here on the left is really tall, right? So if you leg yield your horse into the corner, you're basically sending your bobsled over the edge and killing all those athletes in those funny little suits. So you want to be careful. Don't ride your corners like a leg yield. All right, 2 straight lines with the turning aid. Because corners are another thing we never see really. And again, that's where you prepare your horse for so many movements. And as you go up the levels, they become more and more important because you have less and less time to get organized. Make sense? Okay, let's talk about the stretchy, chewy circle. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, it's usually always at the dreaded E and B. So oftentimes I'm thinking that's a really good stretchy circle, but they're not accurate, and I take a 0.5 off. And when I take a 0.5 off of a double coefficient, you lose a whole point. Okay, and when I go down here to that second rider score in the collectives, there's that word called accuracy there. I'm like, nope. Yeah. You know, you guys think we're mean. We're really not. You just need to ride better. We'd be happy with that. Okay, so what is the essence of the stretchy, chewy circle? The most important thing. What do you think? Okay?
That the horse follows a bit forward and down.
Stretching forward and down. And there's one more thing, contact. Okay? So the horse has to go equally out and down. All right? We don't want the horse to go out. I call that the swallow the telephone pole stretch. You know, like that. Like the python swallowed the alligator. Okay? That's not good. And the horse that just dives and curls up. That's not good either. So equally out and down. If the horse is behind the vertical, that doesn't matter. The horse should have some contact. If the reins are looping, that's another problem. But what I try to do is I try to imagine the horse, that if I just took the horse's neck where it was right there and just put it up, would the horse be in front of the vertical? Okay, so that's kind of a visual. Some people get a little bit too hysterical about the horse being a little bit behind the vertical in the stretch circle. And to me, almost, some conformations are not going to release their back if they're not a little behind the vertical. So that's where we're talking about the head position. And then we also want to see the horse be loose and soft in the back. So out, down, contact, and supple in the back. Then the modifiers are the bend and the 20-meter circle. Is it accurate? Okay. All right, so any questions about training level? You all know what we're going to do to go out there and kill it, right? Okay. Let me just talk about the collectives for the USEF tests. The FEI's made it easy on us now. We give one score, woohoo, now we have to give two. But it's like, that's so easy. And then when you're judging national, it's like 5. You want 5 scores? Are you kidding? So yeah, so we have the gait score. And basically the gaits are equal. We have walk, trot, canter. And both walks count equally. So medium walk, free walk, collected walk, extended walk, both of those walks are equal. If there is one faulty gait, then really the scores are not going to be higher than 6.5. If both walks, let's say both walks are faulty, then you're going to be at a 6. This new work that we're doing with the FEI and the Riders Club, we have the code of points is basically the old FEI handbook. But we're now taking that book and putting it actually into the test. So the riders could get the Grand Prix test and say, here's the first movement, and here's 0 to 10. Here's the next movement, here's 0 to 10. So you can see a little bit for each movement what pieces you have to have for this score. And we have what we call firewalls. So the firewall, a little bit, if we talk about both walks being faulty, that's going to be a firewall, and the gaits are going to be 6. No more, no matter how beautiful everything else is. So be careful a little bit when you buy a horse. You don't want a huge extravagant, like 9 or 10 walk is very difficult to collect, very difficult to put on the bit. A horse that's tight in the shoulder is probably going to have rhythm problems. Some breeds have more rhythm problems than others. So it was interesting in Tokyo to watch the scores on the computer. Oh my gosh, she's at a 98%, 97%, 98%. Whoops, we just walked up, we're down to 82. The walks really are important. And they're both double coefficients. So it's 40 points. So you want to make sure you think about how, before you buy a horse, really think about the rhythm, all right? The free walk. The free walk can be done on a loose rein, meaning no contact, or some contact. You have to decide how your horse walks the best, right? It doesn't matter to me. But if you have contact and your horse is curled up behind the vertical, now it matters to me. And it's not like limbo how low the neck goes. A lot of our younger judges really, even in the stretch circle, will say, needs, go down more, go down more, go down more, and then everybody ends up holding the head down. So the walk is really more important that the horse uses the top line. So think about 2 scores. The legs, like cover the top line, the legs are a 7. Then look at the top line. Oh, he's really walking and moving his neck and using his body. So the top line's an 8, and so now your walk's a 7.5. Does that make sense? But you don't as long as the pole is a little bit level or lower than the withers, it doesn't have to be lower than that in the walk. It's really more important that the horse uses the top line. Okay? And same thing in the stretch circle. In the FEI, we have a definition that says the nose should go between the point of the shoulder and the knee. Okay? We didn't put that in the USEF rule book because we have too many exotic horses, as the Europeans call them. All right. We don't have the typical warm blood with the high neck. So if the neck is high, for sure, the nose going between the point of shoulder and knee is perfect, right? But if your horse already has a lower neck, then maybe it needs to stretch a little bit more down. So again, it's up to you to feel where the horse lets go. Make sense? Okay. So let's move on to first level. First level, there's some center line work where with the leg yields and the circles, and you need to make sure you know where center line is. The biggest thing I think now are the canter lengthenings is the straightness, because most of you don't use your corners. You think when the horse's front legs hit the rail that's time to giddy up, and so the horse's haunches are still in, and it doesn't matter how much you giddy up, if the horse is crooked, it's a 6. So again, come through the corner, shoulder 4, that half halt thing again, okay, and then giddy up. And then at the end, we don't want to see you just coast through the short end and finally get back to working canter. So we're really, as judges, we're pretty reasonable. We realize the first level horse and the second level horse, this is the first time we've done lengthenings of mediums, right? So if we talk about the pendulum, up here's our extensions, and here's our canter pirouettes, our piaffe and extended trot, that we're just starting to use this pendulum now at first level and second level. And it's going to take a little time. The pendulum doesn't go, right? It's a slower process. So don't be afraid in first and second level to use 5 or 6 meters to create your transition. All right? We don't expect you to go boop, boop, right back. At Grand Prix we do. We have higher expectations. But the downwards transitions, I have to say, are usually a really big fail. We don't see them. That's a huge, huge hole. All right? You go, but you never come back. They're vague, they're not consistent, and going all the way through the short end is not it. Okay? So let's try to make those a little bit better. That would be really, really nice for us to see that. The counter canter loop in first level 3 is basic. It's 1 loop, it's not 3 loops. So if you go a little bit past the corner marker and start out, touch X, and then come back a little bit before, it's not 2 corners and 1 loop. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay, we think we have a better diagram now coming up. Counter canter, again, needs to be flexed, positioned, slightly bent in the direction of the lead. Yeah, okay. Now, haunches have to stay on that line. So if you get to X and the haunches fly to the right, if you're in the right lead canter, that's going to be a deduction. But again, here's an accuracy thing where half the time you don't even touch X. So we have to realize your deductions. If you don't touch X, you're making the movement easier. So you're going to get more points taken off. If you go past X, you're actually making the movement harder. So we won't take as many points off, but we will take some. All right? All right. The trot, halt, trot. No walk steps. Remember the salute? Keep your eyes on the judge. Okay. We also have had some people putting their reins in one hand and patting their horse and doing this, and don't do that. You're supposed to keep the reins in both hands. Again, don't make the judge have an opportunity to eliminate you for something like that. Yep, that's kind of silly. Okay, so we still have the same stretching. We have 15 meter circles, which touch quarter line if they're from the long side. If they're at A and C, you have to do geometry, right? 2.5 meters to the inside of the rail. Okay? Cones are wonderful. And truthfully, if you don't have, this is my favorite excuse, well, I don't have a full-size dressage arena. I don't have whatever. Well, you know what? When I was training, my students and I would put letters out on the dining room floor, or out on the lounge floor at the barn, and we would practice riding from letter to letter. So I don't buy the fact that you can't figure out how to do this. There are ways to figure out where you need to go, right? So the fact that maybe your arena is bigger or smaller or whatever, where you train all winter, and then you have to go show, and it is kind of a shock, I have to say sometimes, when you have this great big arena and then it's like, oh my God, that thing's small. But you can train yourself to visually know where you're going. I mean, Florida's drivers are horrible. I have never seen anything like it in my life. They're awful. They pass on the wrong side, they cut you off, and then they slam their brakes. I mean, they're nuts. So some of you ride your horse like those guys drive their car. Now, you need to really pay attention to where you're going. All righty? Okay, now let's talk about second level a little bit. Second level is a bit what I call the great black hole of training, because it's the start of collection. And everybody wonders how much collection everybody really needs. So if we think about it, for me, I'm perfectly happy with the collection if I don't feel the horse is struggling. If I feel the horse has enough balance to do the test and it's all good, then for me, you have enough. All right? If your horse is struggling, then you don't. And that's a decision you have to make as a rider. Are you really ready to move on to second level or not? Right? If you're not getting, I rode with Robert Dover back in the 70s, and I mean for 10 years, and he was great, but he was also like, you're not showing that level because you've not had enough scores at 65%. You can't move up. Robert. But on the other hand, when I had those scores, I could move up and I was successful at the next level. So you have to really think, if you're only getting 60, 61, 62 at the level and not higher, you're not really proficient at that level. Remember, 60 is like getting a C in school. Yep. How many of your parents would have been happy with that when you were growing up? No, not so much. So we want to think about that a little bit and really be fair to our horse as well, because as a judge, I judge a lot of horses that I actually feel sorry for, because I think that was the perfect little training first level horse, probably kicked out of 68, 70% every time, and really is not physically built to be collected and isn't going to succeed at collection. So I feel like the rider's being a little unfair to the horse in trying to push that horse for the bronze medal or whatever the reasoning is. So you have to realize that some horses can't do it. I mean, I cannot do a quadruple Lutz and land it. So I know that. So I'm not going to try to go do what the little 15-year-olds do, right? So we have to be reasonable and logical with our partners as well, okay? Second level, we talked a little bit about making sure you straighten after your shoulder in. All right, very, very important. Counter canter, make sure you keep the hind legs on the rail, shoulders slightly on the second track. So you're in a little bit of a baby renvers feeling. Not a 3-track renvers, but a little baby renvers feeling when you do your counter canter. And that will help you keep the shoulders up. Think in your counter canter that you have just a teeny bit more bend behind the saddle than in front of the saddle. Because when you start bending the neck too much, you're going to put the horse on the outside shoulder and you're going to have a problem. Okay, so kind of front end going straight down the track with a little flexion and a little bit more position there behind the saddle. That also will help later when you start your flying changes. Okay, all right, so turns on the haunches. Everybody hates those, and I don't think anybody practices them, and it's 20 points, and it's too bad. You have the tools. If you can do shoulder in and you can do haunches in, you can do a turn on the haunches, because those are the two movements that help you control all the parts of the horse. So size is not the most important thing in those. We can cover a meter, which is 3 feet. One thing to think about in those, it's not half passing back to the line. So if I come here for a 10, you have to be bent in the direction you're turning. Surprise. Canter pirouettes too require bend. Okay, so if I am going to do my turn left and I'm going to cover a meter, I'm now finished. But there's the line I started on. Do not half pass back to the line. You need to show the judge you have control and that you're finished, and you walk a few steps forward, and then you just walk a little diagonal line back. Make sense? So that becomes very important later with your canter pirouettes, that you're able to control the out part. Yep. Okay, so you need to all work on those, because most of those are pretty terrible, I have to say. All right, third level. Half pass. We already talked about that. Bend. But I would say the biggest issue is that none of you prepare. You just are like, oh my God, I've got a half pass and I've got to go from here to here. So you just barely ride through the corner and you start going sideways. So the horse ends up with no bend, falling sideways, kind of a glorified leg yield. You have plenty of time to create your bend, ride your half halt. Remember that inside leg, outside rein. We got to get that rib cage up over here. Then we tell the horse, good boy, you have bend. Now we go sideways. All right? Now you take your weight and outside leg, and over you go. Outside leg, maybe you need it the whole way, but probably you don't. All right, if you've trained your horse correctly in leg yield, you only need it for a stride or two, and then you need the inside leg to keep the rib cage up and to create that beautiful trot. Make sense? If you finish on center line, that means the hind legs are on center line and you finish in shoulder 4. So that's a little bit tricky at third level, because you have to come from a 4-track bend to a shoulder 4 bend. And at canter, if you try to do that in one stride, your horse is probably going to change. All right? So get that line established first, and then gradually take the bend away. All right? Got it? Okay, flying changes, we could go on all night about those because flying change hell usually lasts a year. And early in the year at third level, there's always some pretty exciting, amazing flying changes. Very fun to watch. Okay, fourth level. All I will say to you is you are going to be so happy next year when you see the new fourth level test 3. Yes, because finally, after, I don't know, I've been on this test writing committee for 25 years, finally, it's easier than Prix St. George. We had a good fight in the committee. Gary and I had it out. We both like a good fight. He loved his loop-de-loops. I'm like, hell no. So, they're going to be gone. All right? The shoulder in on center line, out. Because that's an I1. That's not a fourth level movement, right? Very inviting, no counter change of hand and canter. Very inviting, half pass to center line, straight ahead, half circle, across diagonal to the working pirouette. So it's a very, very nice pattern. It's very rideable. You'll all be going like, oh my God, this is so easy. So we were pushing way too many people up to Prix St. George because the test was a horror show. It's a horror show to ride. It's a horror show to judge. Anyway, but in the meantime, we still have it this year. I'm really sorry. But it is what it is. So let's talk about the loop-de-loops. When you train those, do not put them together. Practice coming on your half 10-meter circle straight down center line, straight meaning shoulder 4. So you're able to really learn how to make that half turn and be very accurate right down center line. Yep. Then go couple letters and then do the half circle and counter canter. And you're going to start to find the horse gets more and more confident and more balanced. Don't put them together. Maybe once or twice right before the show. Train them separately. Okay? You'll have so much more success. And you have to connect those half circles with a straight line. You don't get to go like this. Yep, the X. No X's. Those little diagonal things, we see way too much of that. And then what happens is the haunches go flying. So half circle onto center line, get those haunches on center line, shoulder 4, then create your turn. It will make life much easier. All right? For the pirouettes, we would love to see collection first and then turning. Usually we see the turning creating the collection, which is better than nothing, but it's still not a 7 or above. So if you're really looking for the 8s, 9s, 10s there, number 1, shoulder 4. All right, some horses you have to start in haunches in a little bit. I understand that. I've trained lots of horses, and if I didn't start in haunches in, I would have a 3 because I would lose the lead, or they would do something evil, right? They can do evil things. So sometimes for training, you have to do that. But in the ideal situation, you start from shoulder 4, you have bend, yep, and you control the turning. And the idea that we're looking for is a beautiful finished canter stride with a turn, not a kind of a really hurried one. Ravel had a huge canter, unbelievable, big canter. And Stefan controlled that. His pirouettes were never small. So he didn't get his 9s and 10s because the pirouettes were small. He got the 9s and 10s because the horse sat, took weight, and every canter stride was the same. And it was 6 to 8 strides. It was just beautiful. Yep, so you have to think a little bit. Horses are very clever. And again, if that's what you do, go out and do pirouettes, big ones all the time, and full ones all the time, your horse learns that, and pretty soon you can't stop them. They're like, yay, pirouette, right? So you have to be careful once you start 4th level and above that you think about not training the movements in the same location where it is in the test, because they learn very, very quickly, and oftentimes then they don't wait for you. And you know, for me to give a high score, it can't be a volunteer thing from the horse. It really has to be because of the aid from the rider. All right. Canter halt, same thing. You all come flying down center line and canter, and I'm looking at my scribe going, bet you $100 this ain't gonna work. Trot, 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 off the bit. You know, that's why you should have pirouette canter people, right? Come down center line, couple steps of pirouette canter, softly coming into the halt. One of my favorite things Charles DeComfy said, I just love this. He said, your transition should be like a snowflake touching the ground. You people are like an avalanche coming down the mountain, you know, killing all the villagers, gone, dead, you know, squat. So remember that. I want to be a snowflake touching the ground. No murders, please. Okay? So that's another place, 4th level and above. Now we have canter halt. And then to trot. Now, to get a really, really high score, beautiful pirouette canter, your snowflake transition, horses square on the bit, and then, remember, your first stride of trot is like, yeah! And the judge's like, holy shit, look at that. Right? I tell you what, you watch some of those top riders from Tokyo. They are unbelievable. They come out, that first stride of trot is amazing. It is just super impressive. You know, like, pay attention. All right? So again, those are things you can work on, right? Your horse learns how to halt and then just push up into a beautiful trot. Lots of extra points. All right, Prix St. George. All right, Amy, don't fail me. Shoulder in, volte, half pass. Which one of those has the most bend?
I would say the
Half pass. Which one has the least bend? Volte. Okay. So we have a 3-track shoulder in. The more bend you have on the small circles, the more the horses are going to go on the forehand. We want to think about those small circles, take away a little bit of bend in your shoulder in, make the trot a little higher, shorter, and we're going to turn those shoulders around the hind legs. Right? Okay. Now, what should we do? We should finish the circle. That means we touch the rail and the whole horse actually passes B or E. We are not in a hurry to get to our half pass because you're going to get there early anyway. But all of you seem to think there's a fire at E and B, and God knows you can't touch it because you got to get over there. So finish the volte, prepare, half halt, go. And do not go 5 strides before G. Same thing in the canter half pass. I'm fine if you have 2 strides on center line flying change. If you have 4 strides, I'm going down. And for sure to CDI, the judges from the side, they're going to be like, all right. Now, about Prix St. George, we start getting grumpy about diagonal lines. Karen's laughing because she can't find one in her Tempe changes yet. So she's been beaten up a lot. When it says in Tempe changes, you go to K, that's where you go. You don't end up 10 meters to the right of it. Most horses tend to drift left because that's our stronger side. So most horses drift left in the changes. As a rider, you have to think about it. You want your changes placed on the diagonal line with the middle change around X so that they're spread out. Don't start and finish at X. Do y'all know what I mean? Middle one at X. Okay? And stay on the diagonal line. No drifting, because that's going to get you in the 2s and the 1s. If your horse is drifting, you're going to have an interruption because the horse is going to be crooked. Make sense? Really important. Prix St. George, again, those pirouettes, the canter pirouettes, you guys are drifting all over. It's like a fly in a paper bag out there. Woo, 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 whoop, pirouette. It's like, what line? You've lost the line. Again, that's another place you must stay on the line. The young riders test, they make the young riders do the pirouette at X. That's really mean. But I think that's something we could consider. Because it's very important that you learn to stay on the line. You know, do you drive your car in the ditch? So why do you ride your horse in the ditch? You have to have that same idea that your horse is always going on the line of travel. Years and years and years ago, Kay Meredith told me the line of travel is sacred. Right? 2 movements in dressage have the forehand on the line of travel. What are they, Joan? Joan's like, only 2 movements in all of dressage has the forehand on the line of travel. Haunches in and half pass. That's it. Every other movement has the hind legs on the line of travel with the shoulders slightly displaced, except piaffe passage and the one-time changes. Those movements, because both hind legs are engaged equally, now the horse can be totally straight. We really have no inside rein, no outside rein at that point for those 3 movements. Every other movement, we have to think about that. Okay? All right. I1, the dreaded center line. Being at C is a nightmare. Usually the C judge is the highest judge at a CDI because the tests are written for them, and the crabby ones are always on the side because they see everything, right? But in the I1, the judge at C is like, oh, shoulder in, wandering, not on center line. Hind leg should be on center line in the shoulder in. The volte never starts or ends on center line. Half pass, pass, not there, whatever. Zigzag, did you turn on center line? No. It's very, very simple. You have to know, and I know this because I have very weird depth perception. And I found that when I turned left on center line, I was always past it. And when I turned right on center line, I was never on it. So have somebody watch your turn sometimes and see where you are with that. And then you know, don't trust what you think is happening. Know that you're always missing it, and so you leg yield onto it a little more, you turn a little bit early. All right, I guarantee visually most people are very much the same. So that's really important. Let's talk about placing a zigzag. So we talked about the changes, what we want to see, right? Middle change at X. So when we have the first zigzag we have is in I1 at canter. So we have a 5 meter, 10 meter, 5 meter. So the first thing I do is divide the movement in half. So I have 5 meters, 5 meters, 5 meters, 5 meters. So now I know that that big long half pass should be going through X. Okay? And I know I should touch the quarter lines, because a lot of you don't do that. And remember, if you don't go where you're supposed to, you make it easier, so we have a deduction. Okay? You have plenty of time in that half pass to make your changeovers a more forward thinking, couple strides forward, to really get the shoulders over, engage the new hind leg before you do the next half pass. If you don't take your time in the changeovers and the haunches are leading, then your score just keeps going down. All right? So in the Prix St. George, you have the first canter, half pass, flying change. So if that changeover is crooked, that change is going to modify that half pass downwards. Then, because that change was crooked, that means your second half pass is probably going to have the haunches leading. So already now you're at a 6-5 at the most for that. Okay, so those changeovers, really making them straight, again, the horse has to know when you change the bend and ride the half halt, he doesn't change, he doesn't go sideways, he waits for the aid. Very, very important. All the way back to, what was it, training level we started teaching the horse this little concept. Yeah. So now we are like, we are warriors in the zigzag world. Our horse is so awesome, right? So every zigzag you do, you have to think of dividing it in half. Now, once you start getting to Grand Prix, hey, I did it, there was another 6 in there. So I don't feel sorry for you guys at all. Not at all. Until finally someone said, my, has anyone ever had a 10 on the zigzag? No. Maybe it's too hard. Oh, do you think? So they took 6 out. It's still plenty hard without another 6 in there, right? Okay. So there we want to think about what we just said, what Joan just told us, that half pass has the shoulders on the line of travel. So I find it very, very helpful for my students when we do zigzags. I make them go to center line and I make them say, boop, shoulders are going to go here. Now, change over. Boom, shoulders are going to go to that letter. So that they're really thinking about where they're putting the shoulders for each half pass. Then you don't start freaking out about, I'm not going sideways enough. And because you're turning the shoulders, you're going to increase your bending. Make sense? So that shoulder turning and the neck turning, that allows you to push that rib cage up, but it makes the horse really bend like a nutcracker around your inside leg. When I judge the top, I am like an experienced butt judge now. I've done the Olympics and a World Cup from the butt. So I'm here to tell you, when you're doing your half pass away from me, I want to be able to have the rear end of the horse cover the thigh of the rider, and I want to see the inside ear of the horse over the inside shoulder. When the rider's coming toward me, I want the front end of the horse to cover the thigh. Make sense? Yeah. So you feel like you take the horse's body and you wrap it around that leg. That is bend. Okay? Now, let's just talk a little bit about Grand Prix. Some of the pieces, and it's a very, very difficult test. And for sure, you're at like 65 and, oh, I just need to get the pirouettes. And then the next test, the pirouettes are awesome and the horse blows the ones. And then, you know, to get all of the pieces there at the same time, it's a process, right? It's a tough journey, it really is, because to get everything working. But one thing I think really you need to think about is making sure you count your piaffe steps. It's a shame. Okay, if your horse is going to blow up and explode, fine, get the heck out of Dodge. I mean, for that, it's better for your training to not make the horse stay there and have him rearing and kicking and, you know. But if your horse is there, count your steps. We count the pirouette strides, we count the piaffe steps, we count the changes. I mean, sometimes we make mistakes, but as a general rule, we pretty much are counting all the time. Counting the zigzags, So, and our scribes know when we're counting, they shouldn't talk. Like, don't talk to me, I'm counting. You know, and I do the finger thing for the zigzags and the changes. It's like, that's a counting mistake, that's a flying change mistake. So that I know, okay, there were 3 late behind and there were, my brain can't do it another way. There are a lot of better mathematicians in the judging world than me, for sure. But think about making sure you really count the piaffe steps, because it's a shame, even at the Olympics, we had horses that did not have enough steps, and they were perfectly capable of doing it. It just, you get kind of nervous and excited and you leave. So that affects the transition score as well. All right. Now, if you move too much in your piaffe, so let's say your piaffe starts on center line and piaffes to the quarter line. So now it's moving too much, so you're going to lose a score there. And because of the length of the passage, you just cut out 5 meters of passage. We have to lower the passage score as well. Does that make sense? So these are all these little details that you have to think about when you're riding. And sometimes, for sure, when you're riding and you have a mistake, you have to think about what is the best thing for my training right now. Because even in the show ring, we're training. And we always want to do what's best for the horse's training. All right? The other thing to think about is what's going to cost me the least amount of points. So if you really know where the boxes are, where the movement starts, where it ends, you'll know, oh, that's okay, I've already blown that movement, but now I'm into the other movement, right? Never go back and do it again, because we have to score the first thing. So if something horrible goes wrong in a pirouette and you turn around and do it again, if you walk the whole pirouette, you're still gonna get a 1, and now you're gonna get an error, and the error is very expensive now in the FEI. It's not just a -2, all right? So think about that when you're thinking with the errors. Make sure, don't go back and do it again. It's like a really double whammy kind of thing. If the judge blows the whistle, rings the bell, go ask them where to start. Okay? Sometimes they'll tell you a different place than where you were just going to turn around and go do it again. Make sense? Okay. So the collective marks, back to USEF for 1 minute. We talked about the gait score, impulsion, submission. The impulsion is a little bit, can the horse do it? Do you feel the horse has the balance, has the energy to do the test? Submission is a little bit, will the sucker do it? Make sense? Oftentimes, they have plenty of impulsion, but they've lost their will to live. They don't want to do dressage anymore. And then we have the 2 rider scores. The first one is a little bit like the Miss America bathing suit contest. How do you look in that bathing suit? Pretty dang good. Second one is the talent contest. All right? You might look good, but can you ride the horse? How are your aids? Are they effective? How's the accuracy? So I've had students with scoliosis and people with physical disabilities that obviously cannot have that perfect position. They're crooked, their shoulders are rounded, but we can make them more effective. And I'm like, look, you're going to get a 6.5 on how you look, but I think we can get an 8 on how you ride, because you're going to be super accurate and really showing good transitions. And the judges will do that. Okay, so they're different. I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to look good and be really talented, right? Some days work better than others. So Mary Lynn and I are hoping for, really, we're going to our big ballroom dancing competition this weekend, so we're all like ready to go. So that's sort of the end of the the lecture on how to lose points, not reading the freestyle rules and doing things that aren't allowed is another thing. We could get into a whole thing about freestyle too. But try to read the rules, try to read the definitions of what you're trying to do. If you can go and audit an L program, ABC, that's the best thing you can do, even if you have no inclination to be a judge. It will give you so much information as a rider that I think you will be really thrilled. All right?
I was told that you can't ask questions as an auditor.
A silent auditor, it depends, because you're paying less money than the participants who are actually going on for the exam. When I do an L program, I have people write questions on a piece of paper, and then I go through them on the breaks, because I want to make sure I'm not confusing people. Yeah, so any questions from tonight? Questions? Nope. Oh, you would. Okay, come in here so we can all hear you.
Do you mind repeating two things? One was the half pass from the back. I love that what you said. Like looking at the side and the hook, you know, when you're doing the half pass.
Yeah, so from the back, I want the back end to be wrapped around the rider's thigh, and I want to see the inside ear. Yeah, in front of the rider's shoulder.
And then you said something, when the piaffe steps were not enough. You will also go down a little bit in this transition as well?
In the transition, because the horse is escaping. You know, for some reason, the horse did not stay there long enough. It's the same thing if you did 25 steps of piaffe and you couldn't get out. Yeah.
So you go low, you leave the piaffe alone, and you go down in transition?
No, the number of steps I would go down in the piaffe and the transition. But remember the transition, it's 50-50. How did you get in, and then how did you get out? So this will stay, if that was good, and it's just this little bit here of how you got out. That will go down a bit. Thank you. Any more questions? Nope. All right, let's go out there and get those serpentines.